Nina Simone and Etta James represented two different answers to the same question. The question was, what is a black woman's voice for when it stands at a microphone in front of an audience in the middle of the 20th century in a country that had specific ideas about both black women and microphones? Nina Simone's answer was argument. The voice was a vehicle for what she needed to say, for the political and social and moral arguments she was making, which were urgent and specific, and not interested in softening themselves for the comfort of audiences that were not prepared to hear them. Her performances were controlled in the way that arguments are controlled, shaped to produce a specific effect, built on a framework of what she knew and intended, managed in the service of what she was trying to accomplish. Etta James's answer was confession. The voice was not a vehicle for what she needed to say. The voice was what she needed to give, not an argument, not a position, not a statement, but the direct expression of what she was actually feeling, in its full and unmediated form, delivered to a room that she trusted to receive it. There was no framework, no architectural intention, no management of the material toward a predetermined effect. There was the song and the room, and what happened between them when she was fully present to both. The two of them were in the same building, on a night in the late 1960s, a larger theater in New York that hosted multiple acts on the same bill. They were not performing together. They were performing separately, in the same venue, on the same evening, related by context rather than by collaboration. The musicians who were present, some having worked with one, some with the other, some occupying the professional overlap where both careers had drawn on the same pool of touring talent, had been waiting for this configuration for some time. Not consciously, not with the awareness of people who were planning a debate, but with the intuition of people who understood both performers well enough to know that having both of them in the same building on the same night would produce something worth paying attention to. The musicians backstage described the two performances, in the accounts that have survived, as the most unusual experience of their professional lives. Not because either performance was unusual individually, they had seen both performers before, because of what happened when the two of them were placed in sequence. One of the musicians tried to describe it. He said it was the only time in his career that he had seen a room asked two completely different things by two completely different performers, and had seen the room answer both times with its full self. Nina Simone had asked the room to think, to feel the weight of what the thinking reached. Etta James had asked the room to feel without thinking, to give itself over to the music in the specific way Etta's music required, completely, without intermediary. The room had done both. After the performances, in the period when performers sometimes crossed paths in the backstage or the common spaces of a shared venue, Etta James and Nina Simone were briefly in the same room. The accounts of what passed between them are incomplete. Neither of them was the kind of person who gave detailed accounts of private interactions, and neither of them was particularly interested in the kind of public mutual appreciation that the music press wanted from encounters between significant artists. What has survived is the account of someone who was nearby, that they acknowledged each other with a specific quality of acknowledgement, not the effusive warmth of public displays, the specific quality of two people who had just done different versions of the same deeply demanding thing, and who recognized in each other the cost and the necessity of what each of them had done. Nina Simone performed first. The performance was what Nina Simone's performances were: precise, structured, politically charged, intellectually demanding. the kind of performance that required the audience to be at a certain level of alertness to receive what was being offered. It was not background music. It was not entertainment in the uncomplicated sense. It was art asking for something from the people receiving it. Her performance of Mississippi Goddam that evening, heard by the musicians backstage, by the stagehands in the wings, by everyone in the building within earshot, was later described by a drummer who was present as the most specific kind of difficult to witness. Not difficult because it was hard to watch, but difficult because it was impossible to be unchanged by it. When Nina Simone came off stage, the room the audience was in was a particular kind of room, charged, awake, politicized, brought to a state of moral attention that required a specific kind of response. The musicians backstage felt it. The room had been opened in a specific direction, interior, alert, demanding. Etta James went on. What Etta James gave that room was not the same thing Nina Simone had given it. The room was different from the room Nina had found when she began. Different in the specific way a room becomes different after it has been given a particular kind of intense experience. It had been moved to a place that was interior and alert and waiting. Not waiting for argument or analysis, waiting for something it could simply receive. What Etta James gave a room was the thing itself, not the argument for the thing. The thing. Emotion in its full and unmediated form, given to the room from wherever it came from in her, without the management that structured performance required. The room that Nina Simone had left behind, alert, charged, interior, waiting, was precisely the room that was most capable of receiving what Etta James gave. The debate among the musicians about which approach was greater, argument or confession, structure or abandon, the political and the personal, was never resolved. It could not be resolved, because the two approaches were not competing toward the same end. They were offering different things to audiences that needed different things. What the evening in the shared venue had demonstrated was not which approach was superior. It was that both approaches, in their most fully realized forms, were necessary, that the tradition needed both the argument and the confession, both the controlled demand and the uncontrolled gift. Both Nina Simone and Etta James. The debate continued. The musicians carried it into other conversations, other venues, other years. It was still going, in some form, long after both of them were gone. That is the kind of debate that great art produces. Not one that can be settled, but one that must keep being had, because the question it is about is real, and the answers it is searching for are genuinely different, and both genuinely true. Nina Simone asked her audience to be at their best. She demanded their moral and intellectual presence. She would not soften the material to make it easier to receive. Etta James gave her audience what they might not have known they needed. She did not ask them to be their best. She gave the room her full self and trusted the room to meet it. Two different theories of what music owed the people who were listening. Two different kinds of courage required to deliver them. Both of them were in the same building, on one night in the late 1960s. The musicians who were there, who felt both rooms from the backstage, who felt the room after Nina Simone and then the room after Etta James, carried what they felt for decades. Not as a preference, as an understanding that both things were real, that both things were necessary, that the tradition that produced both of them was large enough to hold both answers to the same question, and that the question itself, what a voice is for when it stands at a microphone, was one that neither of them had finished answering. Not even at the end.